शुरू ही होने वाला है। बस साउंड तो चल रहा है ना, इसका साउंड चल रहा है, मेरे को क्यों नहीं है?
Respected Chairman of today's national webinar, Dr. Vivekananda Saikia, Honorable Dean, College of Veterinary Science, Assam Agricultural University, Khanapara, Guwahati, Assam. Dr. A.U. Bikani, Associate Dean, Postgraduate Institute of Veterinary and Animal Science, Akola, Maharashtra, cum President of Veterinary Internal and Preventive Medicine Society. Dr. R.K. Singh, Wildlife Specialist, cum Senior Veterinary Officer and Resource Person of today's webinar. Dr. Ashok Kumar, Principal Scientist, CIRG Mathura, cum General Secretary of VIPM. Dr. Mukesh Srivastav, Assistant Professor, Veterinary Medicine, Duwasu, cum Assistant General Secretary of VIPM. Respected members of Core Committee of VIPM. Then esteemed web co-organizing secretaries, Dr. Nitin Bhatia, Dr. Nilesh Sindhu, and Dr. S. Mehta. My teammates from CBSE Khanapara, Dr. Ditul and Dr. Ben, and all our esteemed participants joining this national webinar from different parts of India. I welcome to you all. So before we proceed to our technical session, first of all, I would like to request our Honorable Dean, Dr. Vivekananda Saikia sir, to speak few words on this occasion. Sir, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you all. Dr. A.U. Bikani, Associate Dean, Akola, and President, Veterinary Internal and Preventive Medicine. Dr. Ashok Kumar, Principal Scientist from CIRG Mathura, and also the General Secretary of Veterinary Internal and Preventive Medicine. Dr. R.K. Singh, Resource Person for today's webinar, and Co-Organizing Secretary Dr. Nitin Bhatia, and the members of the Organizing Committee from College of Veterinary Science, Assam Agricultural University, Khanapara, and also the participating members, those who are online. At the very beginning, I must thank, or I must congratulate, the Veterinary Internal and Preventive Medicine for organizing a webinar on biosecurity and prophylactic measure in ex situ management of wildlife, which is a need of the hour. But one thing I must say, that the northeastern region is rich in biodiversity, and it is one of the hotspots of biodiversity. And also in Assam, you know, there are 6 national wildlife reserve forests where lots of our wildlife are there. In Assam, if you speak to Assam and northeastern region, mostly people speak about this one-horned rhino, Manas tiger reserves, and also for the natural resources, flora and fauna that are mostly available in this part of the country. While organizing this webinar, the Veterinary Internal and Preventive Medicine, for the biosecurity aspects and also prophylactic measure for the wildlife as a whole in the country, but we must have to think before that how to protect and how to prevent these wildlife from the hands of those of the people who kill them, who wish to smuggle them for their own benefit. But before this, I would like to say that the basic form of management strategies exist for wildlife disease are as follows: prevention of introduction of disease, control of existing disease or eradication. Management may be directed at the disease agent, host population, habitat, or be focused on human activities. Disease agent may be dealt with the environment through disinfection or in the host through treatment. Host population may be managed by immunization, by altering their distribution or density, or by extirpation. And in many cases it is seen or it is observed that translocation of those of the wildlife from one reserve forest to another reserve forest is also taking place. This translocation also, while going for translocation of those of the wildlife, many of the things have to be taken into consideration regarding biosecurity, regarding prevention of diseases, and regarding the existence of the diseases, the places where those animals have to be translocated. So habitat modification may be used to reduce exposure to disease agents or to alter host distribution or density. The most important method by restricting translocation of wildlife to prevent movement of diseases is one of the way. So today resource person, Dr. R.K. Singh, will throw light on this, your biosecurity and prophylactic measures in ex situ management of wildlife. And I hope that he will deliver the goods through his lecture. But before that, I must have to say one thing, that while we talk of biosecurity, or while we talk of prevention of diseases in wildlife or in national sanctuaries, and many a time the common practice that we have seen, the veterinarians is going for the ring vaccination at the vicinity of those of the wildlife national sanctuaries. So with these few words, I welcome you all from this institute, that our people jointly with veterinary internal and preventive medicine organizing this webinar to enlighten the people, those who are related with wildlife, those who are related with disease control, those who are related with prevention and eradication of disease of wildlife. I think the care and management is one aspect, the prevention of disease is another aspect, and working in wildlife is really a hard painstaking task. So this painstaking task, while one has to work in wildlife, many cares have to be taken by the person also, and many cares have to be taken by the for preservation of those wildlife also. With these few words, I welcome you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable speech. So now I would like to request Dr. Ashok sir to introduce our honorable speaker. Sir, please.
Sir, your mic is mute, please. Please unmute yourself.
Good afternoon to all of you. I also welcome the chairman for today's seminar, Dr. Saikia, our learned speaker, Dr. R.K. Singh, and Dr. Nitin Bhatia, our knowledge partner in TAS Animal Health, VIPM executives, organizers, and participants. Wildlife management, especially the disease identification and management, is really a challenging task to the veterinary professionals, particularly the field veterinarian, and always in need of special information and knowledge, as our chairman has already emphasized the importance of such seminar. Today's society has invited Dr. R.K. Singh, wildlife expert and senior veterinary officer working in the Department of Animal Husbandry, Uttar Pradesh. Presently, Dr. Singh is working at Kanpur Zoo, Uttar Pradesh, where he had widely praised for the restricting the mortality to a very lower level. We have seen his number of articles in magazines, newspapers on wildlife regularly. Dr. R.K. Singh is a postgraduate in bacteriology from Indian Veterinary Research Institute, Ajat Nagar. Dr. R.K. Singh had an experience to work in the different locations, especially at the wildlife sanctuaries or wildlife zoological park, working at Lucknow Zoological Park, in Etawah Loin Safari, and he also is an advisor in the zoological park at Gorakhpur. So virtually, he is a key resource person on wildlife medicine in India. So this is really a great time to us. I am very happy on behalf of society and very eager to listen to Dr. R.K. Singh on the topic biosecurity and preventive measures in ex situ management of wildlife. Now I invite Dr. R.K. Singh for presentation. It is over to Dr. R.K. Singh.
Many thanks, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Okay. Yeah.
Respected chairman, seniors, colleagues, organizers, and esteemed participants. I am thankful to Veterinary Internal Preventive Medicine Society and Department of Veterinary Medicine, College of Veterinary Science, Guwahati, for providing me this aimed platform to exchange my views on my experience in wildlife, especially in the field of biosecurity measures in ex situ management of wildlife. As we know, ex situ management is outside natural habitat conservation. So, Indian zoos, especially, are the center of management, ex situ management in India, and a lot of work has been done in the conservation breeding program by the zoos. Second thing, zoos are not now for the recreation; they are for education, conservation breeding, and for rescue operations. Myself, Dr. R.K. Singh, wildlife expert and veterinary officer. Before we proceed, I would like to thank my seniors, friends, colleagues for providing me beautiful pictures and slides and other useful information to make this presentation. Sir, my first slide says what we do. Smoking is injurious to health. Means if you just write down smoking is injurious to health, then it will not prevent disease. Here biosecurity will not work. I would like to explain what is biosecurity in just 2 slides. Then what is expected? Prevention is better than cure. Here biosecurity will work. Biosecurity prevents spread of disease among masses, among individuals. So prevention is better than cure itself speaks about the biosecurity. We are living in the era of biosecurity, in the world of biosecurity. Recent examples of biosecurity are lockdown, wearing masks, sanitizers, all of these things, whichever each and every person doing willingly or unwillingly, knowingly or unknowingly, is related to biosecurity. Frequent washing of hands, steam inhalation. We are taking steam inhalation because our enemy is not visible. Biosecurity fights invisible enemy. And we are taking steam because we assume that some virus, some bacteria, especially COVID-19 virus, coronavirus, may be inside our throat or nasal cavity. So we are taking steam inhalation. We are making social distancing. So these all things which all each and every person on this earth is doing is a sort of biosecurity. Before we proceed, we should know what is the definition of, according to Cambridge English Dictionary, the methods that are used to stop a disease or infection from spreading one person, animal, or place to others. According to Oxford English Dictionary, the procedures or measures designed to protect the population against harmful biological or biochemical substances is biosecurity. In my view, Oxford Dictionary is much appropriate, but the most appropriate definition of biosecurity has been given by Department of Animal Husbandry, Dairying and Fisheries, Ministry of Agriculture, Government of India. Biosecurity is a set of measures because biosecurity alone never works. These are the set of measures which work to protect the population from infectious and contagious diseases at the national, regional, and farm level. And in today's context, I would like to add one more word, contagious disease at the international, national, regional, and farm level. Now, question arises, why biosecurity in zoos? Many persons ask me several questions, and when our flyer was flying in social media, I got several questions. So I added this slide. Why biosecurity in zoos? Many persons, many veterinarians, they ask me this question through social media after going through our flyer. So this why biosecurity in zoos in ex situ management, they want answer. First, wild animals are equally prone to diseases which affect domestic animals. During last 22 to 23 years in my wildlife career, I have encountered almost all of the diseases which affect domestic animals in wild animals. This is the first point. Second, wild animals may also acquire diseases from human beings or vice versa, as most of the diseases are genetic in nature. Then again, here biosecurity is needed because the disease may spread from wild animals to human beings or human beings to wild animals. In zoos, there are animal handlers, animal keepers, there are contractors, plumbers, electricians. They daily go inside zoo houses, animal houses, doctors. They have to handle animals. So wild animals may also acquire disease from human beings, or we can also acquire disease from wild animals. Emerging zoonosis is one of the major area of concern. New disease, according to a study, new diseases are emerging every 8 months, and it involves multiple species. 70% of emerging infectious diseases are zoonotic in nature. I will take two examples. First is canine distemper. That is not that much zoonotic, but this disease was initially known to be disease of canines. But since 90s, it has started spreading among lions, tigers, and other felids. Second new disease, emerging disease is coronavirus. Previously, it was involving other species. Now it has started involving human beings also, and causing havoc, and each and every person is following biosecurity norms due to this invisible enemy. The zoo animals are kept at a specified place, and a constant source of infection may cause disease. Actually, what happens? My senior, he asked me, RK, these are wild animals, and they don't need this type of cleanliness or biosecurity in jungles, in forest. There is who is there to clean their excreta for biosecurity and these things. Why do you advocate this much of biosecurity for ex situ management for zoo inmates? Yes, his question was right. I do agree. But my answer is that wild animals, they themselves follow strict biosecurity norms. And our jungles, our forests are biosecured areas. How? There is a food chain, there are scavengers, there are many birds, raptors. They have their own role, and they keep the jungles, the forest biosecured. Second thing, in a zoo, if an animal is kept in an enclosure and that enclosure is having a sort of infection at a focal point where some contamination is there, we will open animal daily in that enclosure. The animal will daily come in contact with that specified pathogen. And as you know, our body is able to cope up with the infection up to a certain level. And if we regularly get some infection, then the disease, the pathogen starts to show symptoms. This is what happens in zoo. The animal is daily coming in contact with that contamination, that infectious agent, that pathogen. But if somehow some infectious agent, some contaminant, some pathogen is at one place in forest, the animal will go one day there, say tiger, he will go there, he will get some amount of pathogen there, but not to the buffer level. His immune system will work. Second day, he will be around 20 kilometers away from that place. So he will not again come to there, he will not get infection there. Therefore, we need this much of biosecurity in Jews in XC2 management. As we discussed, biosecurity fights invisible enemy. The enemy is not visible. Our hands are clean today, but we are repeatedly washing our hands, and even after washing, we put sanitizer on them. We are taking steam inhalation twice or thrice. Why we are taking? Because we know the enemy is invisible. Corona pandemic, coronavirus is not visible. So biosecurity fights invisible enemy. We have not seen. We assume that enemy is there. And thus biosecurity focuses on reducing the risk of disease on assumption that infectious agents could be present. Third thing, what happens in zoo? Infectious agents are generally invisible and they move through organic matter. In zoos, the animals are kept in enclosure. He is urinating there, he is salivating there, he is defecating there, he is putting secreting body secretions, his body secretions are there. So many organic matter he is daily putting there. And these organic matters are rich source of pathogens, or may they act as an accelerator for the spread of the pathogens. So a range of materials that are frequently within the zoological environment acts as they act as a accelerator for the organic pathogens for spreading diseases. Therefore, we have to clean them. If we keep them not, if we leave them not, like this, if we leave that place uncleaned, then what will happen? The organic matters, they will start, the pathogens will start growing on them, and it will certainly the disease will be there. Then preventive measures are also one of the key to successful breeding and conservation program. If our animals are not healthy, then there will not be any breeding and our conservation program will be a fail. So biosecurity practices can also minimize the risks of exposure to zoonotic diseases for the sorry. Biosecurity practices can also minimize the risk of exposure to zoonotic disease for the animal handlers. The animal handlers and their families are very important for us. So by putting biosecurity practices, we can minimize the risk of exposure of zoonotic disease to our animal handlers and their families. Biosecurity focuses on routine day-to-day activities. So biosecurity is not like a construction. If we construct a building, the work is finished. Biosecurity are a set of measures, and we have to follow them in day-to-day activities, in minute-to-minute activities. Every second we have to follow biosecurity. Say, if we are wearing mask, why we are wearing mask for full day? If you wear mask for 2 hours, then you just put it aside, then that will not work. We have to wear masks in order to protect ourselves from coronavirus day to day. Every minute we have to wear when we are in outside our home. So biosecurity is day-to-day activity. And biosecurity is the only shield which can prevent diseases among zoo inmates and can help in conservation breeding. And whatever we discussed above, by implementing biosecurity measures, we minimized our mortality rate, and we became one of the least mortality zoo in India. Let us see what we are doing to prevent coronavirus.
Excuse me, sir. There is no voice in the video. So if you can explain what the things are there. Only video is there, no audio.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Okay. Then routes of zoo workers, animal handlers, animal keepers, maintenance personnel, neighbors, service personnel like plumber and our electricians, visitors. They may bring infection from outside in the form of dirt in or through their contaminated hands, boots, clothing, hairs. The second main route of infection is food items, especially meat and fish. They are potent source of infection. So meat and fish are examined regularly in each and every zoo by the vets. And improperly stored foods are potent source of infection. So these are major routes of infections, and there are few thick population of human beings and animals, especially stray animals around zoo premises, is continuous threat to zoo animals. Stray animals, they are unattended animals. There is no owner of the stray animals. There is no history of the stray animals. Say if some rabid dog is outside the zoo premises, then certainly somehow the rabies virus may enter inside the zoo through through our clothes, through if he bites someone. But and simians, these rhesus macaques, they go outside, inside rats and mongoose. They are normal inhabitant of our zoos, and these stray animals around zoo premises are continuous threat to zoo inmates. Then vehicles entering the zoo premises are potential source of contamination. The vehicle is coming from which place we don't know. Therefore, most of the zoo have restricted, banned the entry of the vehicles inside the zoo. Only vehicles, staff vehicles, or the vehicles which are coming for some work inside the zoo, they are allowed. Then zoological parks are visited by a number of persons coming from different parts of the country. Say, if our city in which the zoo is situated, that is free from disease, there is no pandemic, endemic like that. But we don't know our visitor who is coming inside. We don't know from which part he is coming and which pathogen he is bringing. So these are other source of infection. Improper biomedical disposal may lead to health disaster. We will discuss this later on. Then rescued wild animals and especially bird brought to the zoo hospital may cause severe disease outbreaks. I will give two examples. Few days, a griffon vulture was presented to our zoo hospital. It was rescued bird, and when I started examining it, I found something is on my hands. So I just saw a number of ectoparasites were traveling on my hand. So then I examined the griffon vulture, its body was full of ectoparasites. The other example, our national bird peacock, male peafowl, was brought inside for examination from reputed engineering institute of the Kanpur, because few birds had died and one was brought there. I saw it was having circling movement and twisted neck. Immediately I suspected Ranichet disease, Newcastle disease. I immediately told him to take it outside, and it was confirmed after examination, after lab examination, the bird was having Ranichet disease. So rescued wild animals, especially birds, they cause severe disease outbreaks. They may bring some pathogen inside the zoo. Rodents, they also spread infection from one place to another. So regular pest control is advocated in zoos, especially they are potent source of leptospirosis. Construction activities in the vicinity of zoo increases risk of disease outbreak due to increased suspended particulate matter. How? There are three ways: physical pollution, anthracosis. A few days back, there was construction of a high-rise building outside zoo premises, and during that period, whatever animal died, it was having anthracosis. The lungs were full of dust particles. Second, if construction activity is there, then certainly sound pollution will be there, light pollution will be there, and they indirectly affect their health, but directly affect their breeding capacity. If sound pollution is there, the then certainly the wild animal will never breed, because they are peace-loving animals. They are not familiar with these such type of sounds. Light pollution in zoo, I have experienced, if some light source is there, so then the wild animal continuously looks at their light source, and it disturbs its biological cycle. So if biological cycle is disturbed, then certainly there will be emergence of some diseases, and your conservation breeding program will not give fruits. So keeping above factors in mind, ex-situ biosecurity is all management practices designed to prevent or control the introduction of infectious pathogens in spread within a zoo and export of these pathogens beyond the zoo. So biosecurity in ex-situ management also speaks about the spread of pathogens beyond the zoo. If our zoo is having some disease, it should not go outside. And if some disease is outside, it should not come inside. But biosecurity can only minimize. It is biosecurity is not the full answer to prevent any disease. Biosecurity can definitely minimize the disease. So on the basis of this, we will discuss some guidelines, some roadmaps for the standard protocol of the for other zoos. The different zoos may make their own guideline of biosecurity protocol according to their animals, according to their species, according to their manpower, according to their geographical conditions, according to their climatic conditions. But it should be clear that no single biosecurity, just as we discussed, provide answer to preventing all diseases. So these are not must do in the zoos, but these guidelines on which the zoo can dwell upon. They can develop their own biosecurity measures. In this connection, I will discuss the experience of Kanpur Zoo in combating mortality. First, what we did to reduce mortality, to become a least mortality zoo, first water from different sources was sent to the recognized labs, and none of the sample was found potable. None of the, even the water which was coming from our pump set, it was also having toxicants and E. coli. The reason was a sewer nala. Sewer nala was flowing inside the zoo, and it was not only passing through the zoo, it was getting terminated inside our lake. Our lake is spread in a 18-hectare area, and it attracts more lots of migratory birds, and it's an ecosystem. It's a self-sustained ecosystem, and a number of crocodiles are also there. So the nala was, this sewage nala was diverted during the period 2013-14 after the long efforts. Before that, a number of leptospirosis cases we encountered, a number of E. coli infections we were encountering. Because this nala had deposited a thick sludge on the zoo lake bed, so that sludge was removed, drying and desiccation was done, lime was sprinkled on. Again, the lake bed was left for the sunlight treatment, and after 2 to 3 months of sunlight treatment and lime sprinkling, the lake was again filled by water. The water was again sent for the exam from zoo lake, water tank, and hand pipe. All of the samples were found to be within the limits of BIS, and all the samples were potable. So only diverting that sewage nala resulted in gave such a good result we got after diverting that nala. Thus, major improvement in the quality of water was detected. So this is the scene of lake was somewhat like this. Weed was removed manually and mechanically. The lake was dredged and it was clean. What was the result? Number of migratory birds also increased. The fish number of fishes increased. Number of crocodiles increased. Second thing we did, the free ranging animals such as spotted. Our zoo is a natural forested zoo. It's spread in a 76.56 hectare forest. So a number of spotted deer and rhesus macaque, more than 3 rhesus spotted deer were there, and the problem was in breeding because zoo has its own premises. So the problem of inbreeding was there. They were sharing our zoo animals, and they were where there was a financial burden for us because we have to arrange green fodder for them also. So according to government guidelines, they were translocated at faraway forests. And rhesus macaques, you can't remove all the rhesus macaques or langus since they are moving population. But according to government guidelines, few of them were removed from our zoo premises. So, and enhanced, especially in every zoo I have seen, every area is mostly infested with the pests, especially rats, mice, and bandicoots. So, enhanced pest control services and the entry of vehicles, especially visitors, which we earlier discussed. What was the result? Due to the banning these vehicles of the visitors, it resulted in enhanced breeding and dramatically infighting among animal was also reduced. Because if animal is under stress, if animal, if honking of horn is there and too much vehicles are there, so wild animals, these are peace-loving animals. So when the animal is under stress, they get irritated and infighting increases among them. After banning the entry of vehicles, infighting was dramatically reduced. The staff, including all the officers, are screened annually for different zoonotic diseases, endoparasites, tuberculosis, leptospirosis, brucellosis. When we started this program, very back in 2012 and 13, the result was shocking. More than 50% staff, including me, I was also suffering from some zoonotic disease. Since last few months, I had a headache and mild fever episodes, but I never expected I am having some zoonotic disease. So the result was shocking. What we did, the suspected, all the persons who were found to be exposed to the antigens were kept away from the animal handling, and they were given free medication. We called the medical team, they examined, and simultaneously random screening of the animal was also done. And the animals were also given treatment at the same time. And after 2 to 3, so we started in 2013, and up to 2016, only 2 persons, more than 50% were in 2013 affected with the zoonotic diseases, but in 2016, only 2 persons out of 28 were found to be positive for the zoonotic disease. And after that, none of the person is positive for tuberculosis, leptospirosis, brucellosis, or any other zoonotic disease in our zoo due to regular screening of the employees and officers in our zoo. A number of biosecurity programs were implemented. We discussed. We constructed tire bath at the entry of the zoo for the vehicles which enter inside the zoo. We constructed foot bath, and we fill them with potassium permanganate, sodium hydroxide, corselin mix at the entry of the zoo according to need. Nowadays, we are using sodium hypochlorite as per instructions of the government of India. So in screen on the left side, there is a tire bath. Vehicles come from outside, and it moves through this tire bath and gets entry inside the zoo. And on the right side, there is a foot bath. Each and every person who is entering the zoo has to go through this foot bath. Then the animal keepers, awareness of animal keepers is one of the major program to make them aware of the biosecurity program. They love their animals so much, but they avoid using foot baths. They will just jump over that. You just tell them, use gloves, wash hands. They won't do this. So for that, we have to have some awareness programs, so that we can tell them what is the importance of these foot baths, these wearing gloves, washing of hands, then only they will follow biosecurity. Ninth thing, ninth point is that soil upper crust, which contains fecal matters, urine, saliva, and other biosecretions. You cannot remove soil upper crust daily, every month. Practically, it is not possible. Pre-monsoon period, during pre-monsoon period, we remove soil upper crust from each and every enclosure, and we treat it with the lime, and after that the animals are again animals are again open in that enclosure. So this also resulted in reduction of our diseases. In this way, we just remove the soil containing organic matters. The garbage and the other waste materials are daily collected and they are sent outside the zoo. Food stores were made damp and vermin proof, and a dedicated covered distribution vehicle was purchased. If we don't have any covered food distribution, dedicated distribution vehicle, then we cannot run a zoo. So every zoo needs a dedicated covered food distribution vehicle. This is the process by which they are using is quick lime or not. After that, the grinding of lime is done. Then the lime is sprinkled and broom is used to spread the lime evenly on in the enclosure. Then we use some sort of chemicals which are recommended for spraying in the enclosures and houses. Post-mortem house and burial incineration site were shifted to faraway place from and if the carcass has to be disposed of by the burial, it should be buried at least at 1.5 to 2 meter deep with ample of quicklime. So those are the measures which we followed. Now coming to the important aspect of quarantine, all the animals which are brought to zoological parks, as we discussed, 2 cases of Griffon vulture and this peacock, all the animals which are brought to, he may bring some sort of infection, because we cannot see infection unless there are symptoms. So the enemy is invisible according to Central Zoo Authority. For at least 30 days, it should be kept in quarantine. However, in cases, it's even more, up to 90 days. Free caught rescued wild carnivores are quarantined for around 180 days due to the fear of rabies, because rabies virus takes incubation period is quite little bit more. Apart from that, seasonal preventive schedule should be there according to the geographical and need of climatic conditions and according to the species of the animals. Because in our, especially in northern India, zoo experience very variation. During summer, the temperature goes to the 47 degrees centigrade, and during winter, sometimes it's below 0 degrees centigrade. So we have to make arrangements. One person asked me, what is the use of blower, cooler, heater in zoos? Why do you put these things for the wild animals? I agree. There is no blower. In forest, the animal knows which place is warm and which place is cooler. But accordingly, he moves himself there. But in zoos are managed by 2-legged animals, that is human beings. Zoos are managed by human beings. Therefore, defined preventive should be there. These are few seasonal special arrangements which we follow. These are the cleaning schedule. Now coming to prophylactic measures, vaccination. according to the endemic zone. Vaccination should be according to the endemic zones and during disease outbreak. I never advocate unnecessary vaccinating animals, especially group animals. We do vaccinate canids and phalids, but vaccinating group animals, especially large groups, unless not to vaccinate is, yeah. So vaccination schedule should be according to that. I never advocate vaccinating group animals, especially ungulates, especially artiodactyls.
सिंह साहब आप म्यूट हो गए। सिंह साहब आप म्यूट हो गए। डॉक्टर सिंह, डॉक्टर सिंह, डॉक्टर सिंह, डॉक्टर आर के सिंह, डॉक्टर आर के सिंह,
लिसनिंग सर,
आप
Am I
म्यूट हो
audible?
गए, आप म्यूट हो गए थे लास्ट 2 मिनट।
अब आ गई सर?
हाँ हाँ,
अब सर आवाज आ रही है?
यस सर, यस सर।
Okay, okay. Sorry sir, actually bad network over here.
सो
Say
प्लीज
if
आप 2 मिनट से जो
group
बोल रहे
animals.
थे दोबारा बोल लीजिएगा प्लीज।
Sir. Sir, we are coming to vaccination or prophylactic measures. The vaccination or prophylactic measures should be according to endemic zone, according to season, according to the number of species, or according to the number of animals, or according to the disease outbreak at that endemic zone. But I never advocate vaccinating group animals unless there is risk of some disease. Risk is too alarming, because say if some spotted deer are there, 70 spotted deers are there in a enclosure, so it is practically not possible to vaccinate them on regular basis. Second, if we start vaccinating them, they will run like anything, and there will be mortality, they will injure themselves, there will be capture myopathy. So unless there is a need to vaccinate them, too alarming need, I never advocate vaccinating group animals. Then coming to, if required, vaccination, if some FMD outbreak is there, then we have to vaccinate somehow. So whatever vaccine is available for the domestic bovines, ovines, porcines, or caprines, that can be used for the zoo artiodactyls, say HS, FMD, PPR, etc. Now coming for the phalids, especially among felines, we avoid using modified live vaccines. And at the time of vaccination, we give quinapyramine salt also to prevent trypanosomiasis. And for canids and hyenas, the vaccine which is available in the market, DSPPI and ARV, that we are using in our zoo. Birds, we vaccinate against Lasota and any other disease according to the local condition. In our North India, only we vaccinate, especially in UP, for against RD. Then when we start vaccinating animals at the age of, especially phalids and canids, at the age of 3 months of age, against feline panleukopenia, calicivirus, feline rhinotracheitis, and rabies, followed by booster at 4 months, and then annual vaccination is recommended. I think we should once again discuss the first one important point: canine distemper vaccine in phalids. This is new chapter for zoos. This is the new emerging disease, and this is one of the major concern for the zoo wildlife personnel and in the conservation breeding of the phalids. The disease started emerging in 90s among phalids, and now it has spread among large phalids, especially lions, tigers, and even leopards in India. So we are importing live CDV canary pox vector vaccine from USA, and this vaccination is schedule is being followed by few zoos only, but in near future, all the zoos will have to share this vaccination schedule. What is the schedule? Primary dose is given, then 2 boosters are needed, 21 days apart. Thereafter, annual vaccination is recommended. These are the few chemicals which we use in the zoos, but we never use phenyl or phenol compounds because they are injurious for the especially phthalates. They are not recommended. Apart from above, there should be a preventive and cleaning vaccination deworming schedule according to the species and previous history of the zoo. We go for the deworming at every 6 months for the herbivores and at every 3 to 4 months for the canids and phthalates. But we regularly examine their fecal matter. If some infestation is there, then special deworming is done. And whatever is available in the market, like parental palmoate, albendazole, fenbendazole, these drugs are also recommended for the wild animals. Now coming to biomedical waste, this is one of the major concern in zoos and other hospitals. So these rules, the biomedical waste rules, they advocate yellow bean, red bean, soiled waste, infectious waste swabs, gauze, bandages, linen, body parts, they should go for incineration, and we follow this. Infected plastics, catheters, tubings, IV bottles, gloves, blood bags, they should be autoclaved. And then there is a white bin, needles with or without syringes, scalpels, blades, etc. They should be autoclaved and recycled to the foundries. Now, broken glass, vials and ampoules, etc. They should be autoclaved and recycled. No food waste, fruit peels, feeds with no polythene, etc. They should be composed. Now, next question comes: the leftover meat in the zoo, leftover bones in the zoo. These such type of bones or leftover meat, we keep them at a particular place, and in most of the zoo, they use for the composting, or a contractor comes at a regular period and removes them. But what we have started a Raptors restaurant. We have a defined place, and we keep these leftover meat and bones at that place, and as a result of which, even vultures are have started coming over there. So it's working at the Raptor restaurant. Vultures are coming. We are acting as a we are using it as a conservation breeding program, and then whatever is left, leftover bones, they are taken away by the contractor on a regular basis. Annual health audit is advocated in the zoos, because if being a zoo vet, sometimes we are not able to see whatever are the shortcomings. So if we call some other vet from a veterinary college, some veterinary institution, or local veterinary professor, certainly he will point out that, Doctor, this is the point where you are lacking. So annual health audit from some independent veterinary agency like government veterinary college, institutions, or local veterinary officer is advocated for the zoos. And regarding samples, unnecessary sampling, I never recommend unnecessary sampling in the zoos. Unnecessary squeezing them, unnecessary putting them in stress, restraining them is not recommended. For sampling, for annual sampling, when we go for the vaccinating, the animal has to be squeezed, we can collect. Or whenever we are squeezing animal for some other purpose, say for some injection, for some wounds, then only the samples should be collected. Yes, if some disease is outside in the zoo, then random sampling is advocated among healthy animals. But unnecessary squeezing all the animals is never recommended. So what we learned today, biosecurity and prophylaxis are key to success of an ex situ conservation and breeding program. These are the few references I went through. I am open for questions. Many thanks for listening me. Sir, am I audible?
Thank you,
sir.
Sir.
Am I audible?
Thank you,
Welcome,
Dr. R.K. Singh,
welcome,
for
ma'am.
your very knowledgeable presentation. We have few questions. Dr. R.K. Singh, sir, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm listening. I'm listening.
Reply them.
Am I audible?
Hello?
Ha,
Am I
yes, ma'am.
audible?
I'm listening. Yeah,
Okay, okay.
I'm listening. I'm listening.
Okay. There are a few questions for you.
Yeah. Welcome,
First
welcome.
question. Okay. First question is, how can we detect? How can we say that new diseases occur every 8 months? After every 8 months. This
Actually,
question
I
was
went
put
through
by some Dr. Sahu.
an article. Sorry, this question.
How can
Hello?
we say that new diseases occur every 8 months?
I went through a reference. I can give it personally to someone because I don't have that reference right now, but I
Okay.
have that reference with me, and I can send it. I can send it. Right
Okay,
now, I
this
don't
question.
have that reference.
Okay. This question was put by the
But
Dr. Hidayatullah Sahu. So we have another
but
question.
certainly I will answer it. But right now, because I moved from that place where we will practicing tomorrow yesterday. So right now I don't have that paper. I left it at that place only, that guest house, and I am at some other place for this webinar.
Okay. So another question.
Next question, ma'am.
Okay. What is the lifespan of zoo animal? Is it longer than in wild or shorter?
Ma'am,
What is the lifespan of zoo
ma'am,
animal?
kindly repeat. Your voice is cracking.
Okay. What is the
Life,
lifespan
it
of
varies according.
zoo animals?
Okay. Regarding the lifespan of the zoo animals, it varies according to species. But let me tell you regarding the few important animals like rhinoceros, 30 to 40 years. Like these tigers, lion, around 16 to 20 years. Leopards, around 14 to 16 years. Sometimes it may be 20 years. And among large antelopes and deer, it's around 12 years, 14 years. And for small deer also, it's around 12 to 14 years. But it varies according to species.
Okay, thank you. There is another question related to lifespan only. Is the lifespan of wild animals longer in case of if the animals are kept in the wild, or is it shorter?
Very good question. No, very good question. It's longer. Why? Because say if a tiger is there in a forest, so he has to care himself, and the tiger, when it grows, when it becomes older, then some prime tiger is there, prime age tiger is there, who is around 4, 5 or 6 years. So certainly he will start to make his own territory, and there will be infighting, and the older one will have to move, or due to major mostly they die of infighting injuries, or they are not able to take their food. Or in what happens in zoo, even if their canines and molars, premolars are not there, we give them small pieces of the meat so that they can just put it inside his uh, stomach. So we care for them. If some disease is there, we treat them. So in forest, the life of a tiger, especially male tiger, is hardly 10 to 12 years. But in captivity, it is recorded more than 25 years in some zoos also. So in captivity, the lifespan is longer.
Longer. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we have another question. What are the levels of biosecurity in zoo? Or how many levels of biosecurity in zoo is there?
Levels, you mean from entering up to the enclosure?
I think so, because this question was put by some Archana Thakur. They just asked how many levels or what are the different types of biosecurity in zoo.
Okay. So as we discussed, right from entrance, if some vehicle is coming, say if meat vehicle is coming from outside, the vehicle may bring some infection. So there is provision of foot bath, tire bath, for the vehicle, and foot bath for the vehicle owner. The meat comes inside. Meat may bring some disease. So we take meat from a recognized slaughterhouse. The meat is daily strictly examined by the vet. Then this meat is washed with mild camenophore solution, and it is put in the, again it is being handled by some other person, zoo personnel, and it is taken to the animal keeper is again handling it and putting it inside uh, the animal house. So the meat will go through the several hands, despite after examination of this veterinarian, the meat is again coming in contact with the two hands. So we have to be cautious at each and every level. The meat is being handled at 4 levels: at the time of slaughter, at the time of chopping, at the time of distribution, and at the time of keeping it inside the animal house. So there are several levels of biosecurity which we need in zoos.
Okay, thank you, sir. We have another question. What are the different methods of pest control programs that are applicable in zoo premises?
Yeah. Well, very important question. Because we don't go for those chemicals which are not recommended, or deltamethrin or cypermethrin for those. But we use some sort of this mixture of eucalyptus oil, neem oil, and burrow treatment. Burrows which are outside the animal enclosure, their burrows can be treated with those cakes which are available. The pest agency puts it in at least 1 feet inside the burrow and closes it. If some pest is there inside, then he will eat it, die. But we never put deltamethrin or cypermethrin or any other anti-pest cake openly in zoos. We use some other Ayurvedic preparations like neem oil or those things. Mixed oil is there, and we are getting very positive result. We cannot remove all the pest, but by using this, yes, one more thing: the water insertion method is very important. Especially aviaries are infested with the rats, bandicoots, and mice. So what we do, we just put water. We put water inside the burrows, and the animal, whosoever is inside, say rat or mice or bandicoot, he will come out, and immediately our zoo personnel are ready to catch them, or with something to kill them. And we can use it for our snakes, our pythons, or our reptiles also. So these are the few methods for pest control. We cannot remove all the pests from a zoo premises, but we can reduce them. We can dilute their population.
Thank you, sir. Another question: what is the percentage of limestone spread on the floor of a zoo premises?
So actually, there is no percent. The quick lime which is available, we just grind it and we sprinkle it on the upper soil crust, and we just broom it. So there is no question of percentage. That is quick lime which is available in the market.
Okay. Another question related to lime only. Okay, is there any chance of animals getting allergic to lime or any other disinfecting agents?
So therefore we use mild disinfectants like this lime, and after putting lime, we never allow animal to come over there. We will keep animal, if we are sprinkling lime at one place, the animals are, they themselves will move at another place, and we broom it, we just mix it in the soil, then only animals are allowed to come over there. So I have never, and this is only used in ungulates, artiodactyls, and we never use in this thing in for tiger or lion. There we use some other chemicals like corselin, saccharina, virkon. These things are used, which are recommended. And we have never encountered any allergic reaction. We have never encountered.
So there is another question, which is better for animals, zoo or wild?
Well, very good question. The person who's asking this question, sorry, I think I made it clear that zoos ex-situ management is for conservation, breeding, and rescued persons. Few audience who are not veterinarian, I would like to make it clear: the zoos are not meant. The animals which are brought in the zoo, they are not brought from the jungles or forest. We just go inside the forest and we just catch the trap those animals and we bring for our recreation. Our zoos are for conservation, breeding, and education purpose. Not if the article I just don't remember of our constitution gives the same freedom to the animals which is for us. So we are not there to trap them. We are for conservation, breeding. Whatever animal we are available in the zoos, they are either rescued animals or they are those animals which are which are bred inside. If we release them in the natural habitat, they won't survive. Zoo animals won't survive there. So we need zoo as a conservation, breeding, and rescue centers, not for recreation purpose. So the question was, which is good? Zoo is good or natural? We need both. For conservation, breeding, we need zoo, because for rescue, say some man-eater is there. He has killed 8 or 10 human beings. So we have to keep it inside the zoo. Say some animal is having some deformity and he is not able to survive in the forest. So we are compelled to keep it inside the zoo. So both are in equilibrium. So we need zoo in order to keep our forest sustainability. We need zoo.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. We have another question regarding distemper. Okay, how frequently do you encounter distemper in wild felids, and how do you suspect, or what is the ante-mortem diagnosis?
Okay.
How do you diagnose distemper in wild felids?
Right. I encountered several cases of canine distemper. I won't take the name of the institution where I encountered, but recently there was news of from Giri Forest, a number of lions died over there due to the this canine distemper. So regarding diagnostic symptoms, among felids, it's very clear cut. The animal, there will be lumbar paralysis. The animal will become anorectic, and if you preconidial, there will be no response. Hardening of pad is not there among felids. Like canids, hardening of pads is not there. And these are the symptoms for which clearly indicate the animal might be having canine distemper. And for this diagnostic purpose, we take swabs. We sent it to the IVRI, and it was confirmed that the animal was having canine distemper. After postmortem examination, we sent several organs there, and in one case, the organism was detected in only this lymph glands which are in, around small intestine. mesenteric lymph nodes. It was noted only in mesenteric lymph nodes, and all that animal was negative. That animal was negative when we sent the samples. But during post-mortem examination, I found that the mesenteric lymph nodes were enlarged. I sent those mesenteric lymph nodes along with lung, liver, spleen, heart, kidney, brain. So all the organs were negative, and that mesenteric lymph node was having canine distemper. So these are the ways of diagnosis. We are at initial stage of canine distemper. We are studying, and scientists are developing several methods. And I'm sure in near future there will be a defined SOP for the control of the this canine distemper.
Thank you, sir. We have another question regarding vaccination. Why modified live vaccines are not used in wild animals?
No. Actually my slide says कि wild modified live vaccines are not recommended for use in phalids because that vaccine may not be attenuated to be non-pathogenic among wilds because we attenuate them. We make them non-pathogenic according to wild animals. What happens in case of wild animals? Most of the wild animals are not exposed to the pathogens because they live in a biosecured forest. So even if a new pathogen is there, then it will create disease among wild animals. But most of the domestic animals, they are continuously exposed to the pathogens. So therefore, if live vaccine is there, it may cause disease among wild animals because that vaccine may not be attenuated to be non-pathogenic among phalids.
Thank you, sir.
Singh sir, can I ask you a very simple question?
Sir, sure.
I would just like to know, because of your experience of last 15 years, does an animal who is actually for the wild have a better lifespan in zoo or a lesser lifespan? Just an experience.
Better lifespan in zoo, sir, because we care there.
No, I'm not talking about the conflict that it has with the carnivorous or anything of that sort. I'm saying about the healthcare. So it is better or wild is better?
Okay. Regarding healthcare, nowadays what we have started providing, we have all the zoos are given instructions to make their enclosures scientifically according to the need of the animal. There are minimum dimensions guidelines. So we are also trying to provide natural habitat. But certainly, if animal is inside a forest, he will get his own environment, and that will be more healthy for him.
True. Ma'am, over to you.
Thank you, sir. We have one question. Okay. This is, I think, a question from non-vet. How to become a veterinarian in a zoo or wildlife sanctuary? Is there any specialization?
No, actually for zoo vets, we prefer PG in surgery, medicine, wildlife. I am a bacteriologist, but I am working for the zoo. But nowadays there is a trend among zoo personnel, zoo authorities to keep vets with experience in surgery, medicine and wildlife. Regarding becoming a vet, that person might be knowing he has to go through the pre-veterinary examination, he has to appear in the NEET examination, and after that he can do BVSC and AH, and after that he can enter any zoo. But most of the zoos, they are hiring vets from on deputation basis from animal husbandry department.
Thank you, sir. One last question. Is there any breeding program conducted in tigers and lions?
Yeah. The Lion Safari Itawa, one of the international center for the conservation and breeding of the lions, and we are now having 17 lions over there. 17 lions. And Hyderabad Zoo is also center for the lion breeding. For tiger breeding, we have 10 tigers in our zoo, in Kanpur Zoo. And for rhino breeding, our Kanpur Zoo is participating zoo, and Patna Zoo, Guwahati Zoo, Delhi Zoo, they are center for the rhinoceros breeding. Likewise, there are several breeding centers recognized by the Central Zoo Authority in among Indian zoos.
Thank you, sir. There were several questions, but mostly you have presented regarding vaccination and deworming and all. So I think we will end the question answer session here. I hand over to Dr. Ditul Burman for the vote of thanks.
Good evening, all the members present over here. Casting here.
Yes, sir.
Dr. R.K. Singh.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I am listening, sir.
Can you listen?
Yeah, I am listening, sir. I am listening.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Sir, I am listening to you.
Okay, sir. Before going for vote of thanks, I just want to ask a question from my side, a small question.
Welcome, sir. Welcome.
There is an institute under CCMB, that is Lacoons Lab, Laboratory for Conservation of this wild animal. So, Hyderabad. So, is they are having any project with your zoo for conservation of wild animal from your region?
Sir, actually for vulture they are having some program, but our zoo is not. But Dr. Sadanand is doing some sort of conservation breeding program with other zoos from Lacoons.
Okay. Yes, you are visible, Dr. Singh.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your fantastic presentation. I'll just go ahead with this vote of thanks finally, because we are coming to the end of this fantastic presentation. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. B.N. Soikia, our respected Dean, for giving us the opportunity and the platform to perform this fantastic webinar at our institute. And then, of course, I'll extend my thanks to Dr. A.U. Bhikani, sir, for his being as a president and Postgraduate Institute of Veterinary and Animal Science, Akola, for giving permission through IS VIPM to conduct this fantastic webinar. And Dr. R.K. Singh, your presentation was the bread and butter for us. You can say bread and butter. It is also providing a future opportunity for wild animal, because we are from a hotspot zone where we are having lots of wild animal, and many veterinarians in Northeast, they're working in wild animal. They want to do something in wild animal. So thank you very much, because your presentation is giving lots of encouragement, and many veterinarians today, they want to join this webinar, but they could not join. So that is another one thing. Many people are asking, then we're giving them link. Somehow they are joining, but not all doctors. And then I'm extending my thank you, Dr. Ashok Kumar, sir, who is always positive and always the leader in the leading the seminar. So thank you, Dr. Ashok Kumar, sir. And Dr. Mukesh Srivastav, who is always very dynamic, and he is always inspiring us that you continue some program on this webinar every Thursday we are conducting. And thank you very much, Dr. Mukesh Srivastav, for your always positive attitude towards this presentation and towards this webinar. Then we are very much thankful, always thankful, Dr. Bhatia, sir, who is immortal, who is absolutely immortal in case of as a knowledge partner, as Intas Polyvet point of view, and for organizing this such a beautiful webinar and making us coming to one single platform. So thank you, Dr. Nitin Bhatia, sir, for your always positive inspiration. You are well known. Everybody knows you. That is the most important thing. Not only VIPM, every society knows you.
But that's my pleasure. My pleasure.
And then we really like to thank Dr. Nilesh Sandhu, Dr. Mehta, and my colleague Dr. Abdul Arif, Dr. Deepa Lokor, and Dr. Ben Madam for their contribution and support. However, I was not able to attend the initial stage because I went to a remote village for a flood relief camp since morning. So I could not manage to attend the initial stage, but I attend the portion of this presentation in the vehicle itself while traveling. So it given me immense pleasure to see all of your presentation in such a beautiful way, and many questions are interesting, but still so many questions are coming. So hopefully we look forward to have some more this type of webinar based on this experience of wild animal, maybe, or maybe in another sector. So we look forward for more webinar in future, and thank you very much for your time, first of all, and such a beautiful platform created by the VIPM and of course Dr. Nitin Bhatia. Thank you. Then I will quit for today. Anything anyone to say? Anything someone want to say? Or Dr. Nitin Bhatia, would you like to say the finishing remarks?
All people, including you, whoever has missed this session or has missed a starting part of it, can look back at the same link. This link will stay active for the next 30 days. The recorded version will be there.
Yes.
So whatever you have missed, you can review anytime for the next 30 days. And after that, it will be available on YouTube. So no worries. Dr. R.K. Singh is there with us on this link and can be there for other effects also.
Thank you. Thank you. Then hello, we'll make a Jai Hind.
Jai Hind, sir. Thank you, sir. Namaskar.
Thank you. Thank you. We end the live session. Thank you.
And namaskar everyone. Namaskar everyone.
Namaskar.
शुरू ही होना बस साउंड तो चल रहा है ना, इसका साउंड चल रहा है, मेरे को क्यों नहीं है?